Welcome, WABC Cop Talk listeners and YouTube viewers. Here we are again with another Cop Talk show. Today I'm the host because your regular host, Kevin Schroeder, is somewhere in the world. I don't know where he is, but he designated me to fill in for him. And filling in for me as co-host is retired New York City Police Sergeant Rory Capra. Rory Capra. Say hello, Rory.
Not to be confused with Gary Cooper, but that's okay.
Say hello, Rory.
Hello, audience, and hello, Captain Ed.
Now, today we have the iconic person that everybody knows, who's now running for mayor, Curtis Sliwa. This is the fourth time we've had him, but we've never had him as the official mayoral candidate. Before he was hinting at it, but now that he's a candidate, we want to really give it a good show. Say hello, Curtis.
Well, I did warn you all about Eric Adams, one of your colleagues who ran on the fact that he was a former cop for 22 years, put the bulletproof vest on every day. House Mouse has been a disaster when it comes to dealing with the police department, which he has been, let's face it, he's been the police commissioner, and he's done a disservice, a disaster. What are they doing on the 14th floor and 13th floor? Are they rearranging everything? Because it seems they took out all the technology, all the cell phones, every bit of communication that all the chiefs and the police commissioner before had. Matry, Caban, Phil Banks, Pearson. And how come they live Shell there and Doutry? Doutry is the deputy mayor of public safety. So the work hasn't been done yet. They haven't ousted everybody yet.
Let's hope it happens.
Well, you have to. It's a disaster. And remember, this was the guy that many cops came up to me. Yeah. Former colleagues of yours acted, no, he's got our backs. No, he's done everything to tarnish the badge of the cops who walk the beat and obviously the cops at One Police Plaza who are the shot callers.
Yeah, well, talking about Adams, and I told you this before, and I said it on the podcast, Adams did 11 years in transit. And then his second half was 11 years with the PD. But he never really did any police work. All he did was make trouble. And he was notorious for that.
Yeah, and he loved to show up at a precinct when he was mayor and sign in the book. What the cops need now, and I know we have a brand new police commissioner, Jessica Tisch, and she's coming up with all kinds of programs. The morale is at an all-time low. I'm out there in the precinct level. This is where you need to be, not at One Police Plaza. Get out of One Police Plaza. Get out there with the men and women who wear the blue shirts, who you need to do a minimum of 20 years. They're not doing it. There's early retirement. They're being recruited away. I saw recently when they gave a sergeant's test at Jacob Javits Convention Center, RVs were driven in from other municipalities, other counties, other sheriff's departments, signing the men and women up right there, saying, hey, you just take the test? Let me show you what we have to offer you in Norfolk, Tidewater Peninsula. And a lot of the police are getting a little seasoning, and then they're out of here because the morale is rock bottom. So you can say, okay, we're going to do this program, and if you don't improve on the morale of the average man or woman who joins the police department, you're not going to be able to meet your recruitment goals. And now Tisch wants the lowest standards. Really? Jessica Tisch, you want to lower standards? Did you see what happened in Memphis, Tennessee when they lowered standards?
Yes.
Basically, you couldn't tell the difference between the thugs running the streets and the cops chasing the thugs who were as thuggish as the thugs. This is not an answer to the problem.
Well, I was going to get into that later, but now that you're on police, how do you perceive crime and issues related to crime in this city? And the lack of respect for the police?
Well, the lack of respect is really the key issue that I see. You can spit at a cop, you can almost punch a cop, push him, and there's a revolving system of justice. There's no naming and shaming of DAs. The DAs, basically, they depend on police to go out there and make arrests so that then they can do prosecutions. But they remind me more of legal aid attorneys than they do of prosecutors. Hey, there are enough people out there who protect the rights of the accused. I don't need our DAs protecting the rights of the accused. I need them prosecuting, win, lose, or draw. And a mayor has to be able to go into their county and specifically point out to the people in that county, What a disaster their DA has been. Darcel Clark in the Bronx is the female version of Alvin Bragg in Manhattan. Eric Gonzalez in Brooklyn is in charge of the largest district attorney's force, and he's letting people loose on a regular basis. Those three cause most of the problems in New York City by turning criminals loose.
Well, as mayor, what would you do about that?
What would you do? Well, right away, you don't control the DAs because, remember, that's state. You put pressure on the governor, Hochul. She had Bragg on the ropes, and she could have fired him. But again, not enough pressure was put on her to do that from Eric Adams, who kept making love signs with Alvin Bragg. What we need here in New York State is not a governor who can fire a mayor or fire a district attorney. We need recall, what they have in California. Every time they're dissatisfied with a DA, a mayor, a governor, if you notice, the people of California have the right to recall the elected official. We've had problems now with de Blasio, where people wanted him out, Adams, Cuomo when he was governor. Why don't we just have recall? We keep it out of the hands of the politicians and judges and let the people decide. If you can get enough signatures to call for a recall, you can actually end up stripping that person of their authority and voting somebody in.
So as mayor, would you push for that?
Absolutely. The other thing I push for is charter revision. Put it on the ballot. Let the people decide if we should be a sanctuary city or not. Should not be determined by the politicians or judges. If the people of New York City want to maintain a sanctuary city status, let them go this November during the mayoral and city councilmanic elections and vote initiative and referendum. And I'm going to tell you, it'll be good for the city because more people would turn out to vote. People will vote for principles, not personalities. That's always the case. Put a principled idea up for a vote, and people feel like they can make a difference. Sometimes you put a personality up there, they say, it's a waste of time to vote. But principles will get people fired up. And I want to hear debates on both sides of the issue. You'll have town hall meetings. You'll have people actually registering to actually vote, things that they wouldn't think of doing before.
Well, Curtis, as the mayor, will you be able, or would you be able to work with the city council and the state legislature in order to reverse some of these disastrous policies that impede law enforcement from maintaining safe streets and maybe reduce recidivist crime?
Well, first thing I would say to city council members, regardless of what party affiliation they have or whether they lean far left or they're moderate or they lean to the right, is you need discretionary funds in your district. You see, Eric Adams never sat down individually with the city council members and found out what are the needs in your district. Because they're always thinking of getting reelected. They're always thinking of putting their signature on a garbage can saying, courtesy of Caban in that story. When in fact, she paid nothing for the garbage can. It's our money. But they love to take credit. And it's called discretionary funds. Now, de Blasio knew that a little better than Eric Adams because he was a member of city council. Eric Adams never sits and meets individually with them. And you don't do it at City Hall. You go into their district. You say, pick a restaurant. Pick a place where you want to be seen with the mayor, where people can come up and question the mayor. They'll feel like $1 million. Part of this is to assuage them. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to win every battle.
Right.
Well, right now, he has no discourse with members who are opposed to him, and he offers them no discretionary money, which a mayor can do. A mayor can do a lot for a city council member, but you have to visit them, you have to meet them and greet them, and you can't immediately tarnish them.
So it would be your commitment to be engaged with them, to be out there.
Well, first thing I'll ask him is, how did we find $5 billion to take care of the migrants, and you're telling me you had to take $1 billion out of the police budget and we never put a penny back?
Yeah.
Where did that money come from?
It's always amazing how they find that money after they're
and
crying
by the way,
for
the people who are
first half of the
pronouncing
year.
themselves to be law and order now, Justin Brennan, who wants to be the controller, and Richie Torres, I'm going to be the next governor, over my dead body. These guys were dancing the horror and the tarantella when, if you remember at that time, the speaker of the city council and the mayor were doing high fives to Blasio with Dermot Shea, that sellout, who should have retired, he should have turned in his badge. He came out like a puppet, and he said, oh, no, I agree. Take $1 billion and put it into programs for youth. Yeah. He sold the cops out, and he should have been run out. In fact, anytime he shows up, at any kind of gathering where former police commissioners come in, I want to know, how come you guys don't get up and give him the Bronx cheer, boo him for what he did to the police department? Remember, he could have resigned. It might have led to a series of resignations. And what did he do instead? He actually came out and he explained why it was important to take $1 billion out of his budget.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know that background. They don't know the history of that. Yeah.
Getting back to the city council, as you know, they've passed a series of laws, local laws, that restrict the police. As mayor, what would you do to counter that?
Well, number one, we go way back to Donovan Richards when he was the head of the Public Safety Committee. He is now the borough president of Queens, still hates cops, and thinks the next time around he's going to run for mayor. I notice he's making the rounds now, trying to be pro-cop. Boy, these guys and gals, they reinvent themselves like there's no tomorrow. It all started with when you grab a suspect, what you can do in terms of touching them, grabbing them, holding them. And the Public Safety Committee basically said you can't do anything. And I have witnessed cops that I have come to the aid of with guardian angels who are restricted in terms of anything they can do. And oftentimes it gets worse because they have to end up getting into a brawl. People are getting injured. The handcuffing techniques leave a lot to be desired. Yeah. I'd have to look at that, what they're doing in the academy. But I have guardian angels who are better at cuffing than in some instances trained professional police officers who've graduated the academy at College Point. And by the way, I never heard the follow-up. The radicals attacked the police academy in College Point. They rappelled from the roof. They vandalized the property. The cameras weren't working. There were no police on the grounds. If you can't even protect your sacred training academy, how am I to expect that you're going to be able to protect the people of the city of New York and obviously the places of importance in the city of New York? The police academy, have there been any arrests, gentlemen?
Not to my knowledge.
Of course not, because we don't want to add to the arrests because it might make it appear we have a crime problem in New York City.
Getting back to the city council, would you have the corporation council, Corporation Council, yes. Would you have them introduce legislation to take back those laws, those restrictive laws?
Oh, I wouldn't hide behind the Corporation Council. Obviously, the legal entity of the city is the Corporation Council. We've just had a mayor who every time he signs something that makes a cop's job that much more difficult, like, remember, kettling, controlling demonstrators. Oh, I know it's a disaster, but the lawyers made me do it.
Right.
I would take the initiative. The lawyers would give me legal guidance, but I would be the person making the final decision. Now, it's a heavy haul to take back what has already been ingrained in terms of policy and law. Mm-hmm. You have to find your allies first, and then you got to trade. And the city council members want things in their district. Are they going to sit down and negotiate a trade? They certainly found $5 billion for the migrants. They had no problem with that. There is money there in the budget. You just have to be able to do a deep dive and figure it out and then trade. This is what I want back on behalf of the police. And what is it you need in your district? But you're never going to get everything you want in the city of New York now with a city council that is stacked against you, that has a veto-proof majority.
Well, even if you, get overridden, you make a point. For example, if you had one of the restrictive laws recalled and a new legislation get in, and they overrode you, you would still have the sounding board of, look, I tried, the council has given me a hard time, but I did my best.
What you do is, every time a crime is committed in a councilmanic district, a high-profile crime that everyone in the city is aware of, you show up in that councilmanic district. You say, because of council person B, our police are not able to do their job. Now, do you still support your council person? And then when they're up for re-election or if they have a primary, you go in there and you use the full weight of the mayoralty to campaign against them. This mayor doesn't do it. De Blasio didn't do it. And no Democrat is going to eat their own babies. They're afraid of the socialists. The problem is whoever pretends to be a moderate Democrat now, first of all, they try to get Republicans to switch their party resignation. Please help us like Hessians and mercenaries like the French Foreign Legion to fight the socialists. They don't primary them. They don't battle them. And the mayor, when's the last time he went into a councilmanic district, 51 districts, most of them are anti-cop now, and actually said this particular crime was the result of this particular council person advocating that cops cannot grab suspects, cannot detain suspects. I mean, look at what he did in Rikers Island. He used an executive order when they wanted to eliminate the Bing, putting people in place where they won't be a danger to the rest of the general population and obviously to the correctional officer. They were going to put inmates on the prison bus, unchained, unshackled. Can you imagine what that would be like, transporting 18, let's say, young men who had to go to court on that morning with no chains, no shackles, yet the mayor issued an executive order to prevent that. So he knows when to issue an executive order. He should be issuing an executive order to put ICE on Rikers Island, because that's where you can immediately grab those who shouldn't have been here to begin with, who've already been accused of committing crimes, and maybe through due process, you'll be able to deport them because you found out that they actually committed the crime, and they either need to do time here and then deport them or immediately deport them, depending on the seriousness of the crime.
Curtis, how would you navigate that as mayor, working with the current federal administration and ICE? How would you navigate that?
Well, first off, it wouldn't require having a meeting at Gracie Mansion and then the mayor being summoned over to ICE headquarters at the federal building in Foley Square. You would have ICE as part of the public safety apparatus. I can never forget going to parade after parade and members of Immigration and Naturalization Service basically having to hide. They'd have like 2 or 3 members. Almost no parade wanted them. Other law enforcement didn't even want to be associated with ICE. I would make sure that everybody works together and blends together. Now, if ICE is wrong and they've detained somebody that shouldn't have been detained, then you sit down and you say, hey, did we really have to go after this pizza delivery guy because, he had a driving problem? And he's been here 18 years. He's raised his family. Do we really want to break up the family? Aren't there really bad guys out there that we still need to get? And they'll tell me, well, the computer spit out his detainer. I said, I got that. But this should not be by computer alone. It should be by common sense. And if you have a conversation and a working relationship, you can work those things out. But if you're going to call ICE thugs like Andrew Cuomo, how are you going to get cooperation of men and women who every day put on bulletproof vests and risk their life to detain individuals and send them back to their country of origin, who've either committed crimes here or serious crimes in their country of origin, but they were never vetted out at the border? I mean, how could you even consider electing a guy named Cuomo who called ICE thugs when they helped go out, catch MS-13, and deport them back to El Salvador?
Well, since Cuomo is going to be most likely your primary enemy, he's done a lot of other things. For example, he appointed 11 of the parole board members. And then when he was asked, about them, he said there's nothing he could do about removing them, which is nonsense. And now I recently read that there's going to be 44 released cop killers, number 44 in the last few years. What does he do about it? Nothing.
Most of them are holdovers from his administration. Remember, he fled, fearing impeachment by his own Democrats, indictment by the Attorney General. He fled like Napoleon to the island of Elba to plan his return. And he wants to whitewash all that. In fact, he was so hell-bent on turning loose cop killers. He did 4 in 3 months.
Yes.
And he certainly controls the parole board. And he's upset at any of his members, he could replace them. So he actually was encouraging that. Because remember, he wanted to run for president. This is all about political posturing. So he went all the way to the left. Qualified immunity. That's what every cop needs. Do you know we're paying $25 million of his legal bills for the women that have charged him with sexual harassment, including a New York State female trooper who's now part of Hochul's protective division? With $25 million. And why? Because he has qualified immunity. Yet he led the effort, along with Biaggi's granddaughter, in the state Senate to strip cops of qualified immunity. The people who need it the most, because they're dealing with the public on an everyday basis. Yet He says, why are you complaining of the $25 million you're paying for my legal defense fund? Because you should be paying for it, Cuomo. You're the perv. 13 people who worked for you, and all of them are lying and making this up. Reminds me of Timothy Pearson. Remember, he had 4 charges of sexual harassment. Every time he met with females in the police department, there had to be a male monitor in the room to make sure he wasn't perving on. Is that what we're going to have if Cuomo is the mayor? You need to have a monitor in the room every time he's meeting with a female? I mean, think about these ramifications.
Maybe the governor will appoint a special monitor.
Or Tish James. Maybe she should be his special monitor.
Speaking of qualified immunity, not only did the state take that away from the local cops, but the city council picked up on it. So you have 2 governmental agencies that have removed the defense of qualified immunity. I hope that you would try to get that restored.
Well, of course, because I would say to everyone, and once I'm sworn in, I am removing the qualified immunity from myself and from all of you. Judges, elected officials, members of the bureaucracy. How can we be protected when the people who protect us on the front lines have no qualified immunity, including, I would take from them their security details. If they hate cops, why are we paying for cops to protect them? Let them protect themselves.
Jumaane Williams is an example.
Not only Jumaane Williams, but Brad Lander, all of them. I mean, all of them. Come on, think of it, the sanctimonious hypocrisy. They want protection. God forbid somebody comes up and gives them grief. Right away, they call for 5-0, the police, please, deal with them. But should it happen to an average everyday person or a cop? No. You have no qualified immunity. None. You're on your own. You're on your own. And that's why you have such a dearth of recruits. In the past, when I was growing up, the way that a lot of cops would rise through the ranks is the father would then pass it on to his children. You really should get involved in police work. I don't think I've ever run across a time when I'm running across more fathers and mothers who are suggesting to their children and grandchildren that they don't seek a police career opportunity because they'll have no protections and they'll be frustrated and they'll probably want to leave before they hit the 20-year mark.
On the staffing problems that you just brought up, as you know, it's created an enormous amount of overtime that affects the city budget. What would you do about this, about staffing problems?
Well,
and overtime.
If you notice, Eric Adams, the titular police commissioner, decided to cut overtime because of his pal, Jeffrey Madry, offering overtime for sexual favors on the 13th floor. So instead of dealing with the problem at hand on the 13th floor from his pal, Jeffrey Madry, basically universally cut overtime for the cops. They've cut overtime for the sanitation department. Look how dirty the streets are. Look how much crime we have in the streets. Look how much the cops look the other way because they're told, don't make collars. Don't make us look bad at the precinct level. Now we have Jessica Tisch talking about quality of life initiatives. How many times have we heard this before? Oh, we're going to have a centralized unit. It's going to be out of one police plaza. What are you talking about? That should be at a precinct level. The precinct knows best what the quality of life problems are. They have community councils. They have meetings. They know you're gonna funnel everything to one police plaza. And who started that process? The disgraced Phil Banks. So why is Jessica Tisch using some of the same operatives of the men who either left early or had to be dismissed? And now what's this? Okay, we're going to lower the standards to be a cop. You know, maybe if you're special ed, you can be a cop, right? But you got to be able to run on time the 1.5 mile route. It's sort of like, okay, physically, we're going to make sure your muscles are intact. But the most important muscle, your brain, we don't care if you don't have the education to deal with a very complex situation. Now, it wasn't like when I was a kid and the cops could easily deal with those problems with a high school education, with military service as a supplement, or even a GED. You know, I knew guys who went to 600 high school, which are troublemakers who ended up becoming cops, because back then you didn't need to know all you have to know today to be a police officer. It's a much more sophisticated position now with all the nuances that are involved.
Yes, that's very true, especially with the law. You know, the law is constantly changing, and you really have to be able to intellectually discern differences in various degrees and what constitutes what.
Well, I mean, when you guys were cops, you know, you turn in your day book, right? Mm-hmm. And your sergeant would say, your handwriting sucks. You must have gone to public school. I can't even read whatever you did. They like the Catholic school guys because they print so well. You could read their printing at an eye chart at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Now everything's on the phone. I would take the phones away. You cannot have police officers out there, as I see always, their eyes are glued to the phone. For whatever reason. I know they're not all dealing with, writing reports and getting commands from the precinct. They're sexting and they're texting like any young people would do with high levels of testosterone and estrogen. Take the phones away. It is an incumbent to them doing their job, and the public sees that all the time. Public passes them all the time, and they see that their faces are in their phones. It's a bad look, and the hats got to go back on the head, the caps. That would be like me telling the guardian angels, take your berets off. You got guys out there and gals, I can't even spot them in a crowd. Never mind the fact that they're so small, I need an electronic microscope to see them. But they don't wear, they sock caps. What about the good old-fashioned police cap? Put it on your head, that's where it belongs. So in a situation, I know you're a cop. I never know that there are cops either on a platform or in the streets unless they're this close to me. The regulations and the standards have just been thrown out the door. And as a result, I see cops that have no pride. You see their shoulders are hunched up like this, where they're proud to be a cop. It's like, let me just get through 8 hours. Let me bury my head in the phone and stand in the corner. That's not what being a cop is. You want to motivate them to go out there and make a difference. And I would tell them, at the precinct level, not just at their graduation with their parents and friends and act like, I say, look, you go out there, you do your job. We got your back. Corporation Counsel has your back. But if you went beyond the gray area, then there's a price you got to pay. You know the difference between what you can do and what you can't do. But when you do things the right way for the right reason, this mayor has your back because nobody has been out in the streets longer than Curtis Sliwa. And as much as some people like Jessica Tisch, not my cup of tea. Come on. What streets has she been on? She's walked a beat from the Metropolitan Museum to her townhouse between Bloomberg and Spitzer. That's not walking a beat.
I think nobody can take away the streets from you, Curtis.
Well, look, if you had to, you say, Jessica Tisch, straighten up one police plaza. She seems to be doing a very good job at that. But leave policing in the streets to other men and women who have the experience. She does not have that experience. She walked into a precinct in Jamaica during the Christmas holidays. And I mean, I thought it was a party instead of her, giving a morale speech to the troops out there in the streets who really need to get a sense that the police commissioner has their back. I don't think they have that. I don't think they get that message at all from one police plaza.
The police department is top heavy at the top level. When I came into the police department many years ago, there were only 7 deputy commissioners. Now there's twice the number, and many of them are really useless. Would you encourage the commissioner to get rid of them?
Oh, absolutely. There are too many white shirts. Sometimes there's so many white shirts there, I'm like, I need to put sunglasses on. It's like, what do all these white shirts do? But when I'm out there actually taking the subways, walking the streets, and in the parks, I see the blue shirts. I almost never see the supervisors, the white shirts. You need to have that supervision out there. It keeps the cops honest. If the cops know that the supervisor is not coming by, it's a human tendency to slack off. It's just a human tendency.
Well, I'm talking about the deputy commissioners. Adams has appointed many more than is necessary. The money that goes to their salaries could be used for the working cops. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, also, we got to start with this deputy mayor of public safety. The last person to have that before Adams was David Dinkins. I rest my case. That was Judge Mullen. Rudy comes in, he eliminates that position, crime drops precipitously, and then Ray Kelly kept it going down under Bloomberg. They didn't have deputy mayors of public safety. That is basically a no-show job. What do you need a deputy mayor of public safety? You got a police commissioner, got a fire commissioner, you got OEM, right? You got people already in charge. What do you need a deputy mayor of public safety for other than to basically cover up problems that you as the mayor should really be dealing with yourself?
That's correct. But traditionally, the commission is reported directly to the mayor. And I think there's no more important connection between the mayor and the police department than direct contact.
Maybe that's why Eric Adams speaks in the third person. Eric, Eric, because he's the mayor and he's also the titular police commissioner. So you can imagine what that conversation is. Look at Keyshawn Sewell told you are to report to the deputy mayor of public safety, the corrupt one, and then Pearson at the end of the week. Before you can make any decisions, Banks and Pearson. How could you allow somebody to have to go through that kind of ordeal until finally she said enough is enough when she tried to discipline Madry? Madry complained publicly. She was doing us a public service, and the mayor shot her down and basically took away whatever power we thought she had in that particular situation. She was basically a placeholder, and it's been a disaster ever since. Jessica Tisch has stabilized it, but look at the mess we dealt with after Keyshawn Sewell left to work for the New York Mets.
So you would eliminate that position and have all the agency heads, the commissioners, then report directly to you.
There's no point. You're in charge. If I have a problem with what you're doing, I'm going to meet with you privately. There's going to be nothing done publicly. Any of these public pronouncements and statements of peace, love, and happiness when you're really having problems need to be dealt with behind closed doors. And if you're not happy with the person, you get a new person. It's that simple.
Curtis, on another level, a large number of police officers were fired for not getting the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. Would you bring them back?
Absolutely. I marched with them across the Brooklyn Bridge when I was running the first time. There were 4,000 at that time. Not just cops, firefighters, healthcare workers, sanitation workers, teachers. And they had to make a decision because de Blasio had imposed that. Now, Eric Adams didn't have to carry that on. That came on at the end of really Bill de Blasio's regime over the 8 years. Eric Adams could have immediately said, we're not doing that. We're hiring everybody back with back pay and benefits. The same people that we were applauding at the outset of COVID and coronavirus. Remember, at 7 o'clock every night, hey, heroes, we turned to zeros. And about 400 of them had their lives destroyed. And we claim we don't have enough personnel. So why aren't we bringing them back with an apology at City Hall done by the mayor on behalf of all the agencies with back pay and, most importantly, benefits with an opportunity to continue on in this career if they want, or if they no longer want it, at least give them the back pay and the benefits that they were entitled to, and a public apology, which is something that public officials almost never do. Never. I've never heard Trump apologize. I've never heard Cuomo apologize. I've never heard Adams apologize. My life has been full of apologies. I know how to apologize. It actually helps. When you mess up, you need to fess up. People will have more respect for you that way.
Curtis, beyond crime for a moment, do you see other problems across the city that you would be potentially, as mayor, looking to address to make the city a more prosperous and a more vibrant city?
Yeah, systemic. They talk about the need for housing. I said to myself, now wait a second. When I was a kid, 1960, you had about 8.1 million people living in the city. Think about 8 million. Was plenty of housing, right? Now they say there's about 8.5 million with the migrants, probably about 9 million. Now there's no more housing. Well, guess what? That's really not the case. I see apartments that are warehoused every day, and I see people who have private homes, multiple apartments, where when they lose a tenant, either through death or they moved away or they finally got them out of there, they paid them to leave, they don't rent that unit any longer because they don't want to go to tenant-landlord court, which is a nightmare, and they don't want to potentially end up with a person who comes in and starts vandalizing their property. There's plenty of apartments. We got to sit down with the big, the mid-size, and the small landlords and say, look, you got all these apartments that you've warehoused. What do we need to do to get you to put it out on the marketplace? Because all of these people running for office, I got a plan, city of yes, 10 years from now, 80,000 units. 10 years from now,
Right.
that person will probably be dead. I'll probably be dead. I mean, and everybody go, oh, that sounds so good. What about housing here and now? And the cost of living is skyrocketing. So if you're going to continue to have these hidden taxes, speed cameras, red light cameras, congestion pricing, constantly raising the fares, tax to the cradle to the grave, you're even driving the new generation out. Generally, the newbies will come in. The older folks will start moving out. Now you get even people come in here for a year or two and they say, I can't make it. While they're living in an apartment with 4 other folks as if they were in a college dormitory.
Yes.
Because they can't afford it. It's unaffordable. And what do our Democrats always tell us? Leave. You don't like it? Leave. Who said that? Cuomo said, leave. Adams said, leave. Hochul said, leave. And guess what? A lot of people are listening to them. But they say, pay your taxes first before you leave. They always want that money. So that's how you start changing it. You look at the things you can do right away. You don't come up with these grandiose schemes that, oh, maybe you'll derive some results 10 years from now. Because all you're doing is putting that off. You're making, like, the city of yes will destroy residential neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. You got to put up a 20-story apartment building in a neighborhood of 1- and 2-family homes? No, because then you're going to drive all of those people to Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Tennessee. They're going to be out of here. They're going to be out of here.
Curtis, you hit on one of the hot-button topics as you were
we got to hit on
that.
Ed's favorite topic.
You just hit on congestion pricing,
yes,
which, as you know, is impacting New Yorkers across the state that come into the city, and it's also affecting particularly our civil service workers, our police, our firemen, that in many cases have to drive in and sometimes use their vehicles during business hours. That's affecting them. Do you have a position specifically on that?
Oh, yeah. No to the congestion pricing. I encourage the president to follow through on what he said will be the time where he forces congestion pricing to come to a halt. Kathy Hochul will battle it in court. The full weight of the federal government should be used to eliminate. All it is another tax. That's all. All these are hidden taxes. Taxes. They just want to take more money from the working class men and women who are most vulnerable. Poor people are always going to have their bills paid for them by government. Who subsidizes government? The middle class. The rich people, they have their write-offs. They're up in the suites. They're out there in the Hamptons. They can pay the congestion pricing. You know, gee, that's right, pay the congestion pricing, even if they charge you twice for a stretch limo. They don't care. And you know what? They write it off. Mm-hmm. Middle class people, they take it right in the neck, and the next thing you know, they're out of here. And a lot of them have left, and more will follow.
Curtis, you're an expert on the emotionally disturbed, both on the streets and the subways. What would you do to fix that problem?
Well, first off, now that Cuomo has resurfaced, when he got elected governor, there were 40,000 beds, mental health beds, available for those who are emotionally disturbed in the state system. It's mostly state system. By the time he fled, fearing impeachment and indictment, there were only 3,000. He cut them. A lot of these people that we see living in the streets and subways and parks are the result of his cuts. So you say to yourself, we have space in these state mental health facilities, like Creedmoor. We put up tents for the migrants. Only 30% of the beds are occupied in Creedmoor, a state facility. The facilities can hold more patients. We have to make sure they get care. They're Americans. We have to take care of our Americans first, especially if they're veterans who served in peacetime or wartime. They go to the top of the list. But if we're not taking care of our own emotionally disturbed who have serious issues, shame on us, because then they're relegated to living in the subways, the streets, the parks. They're a danger to themselves and everyone else. And every time the elected officials don't like the way cops have handled these 911 calls, well, we need mental health experts. We need nurses and doctors to go on 911 calls. This was supposed to be what Thrive did when Bill de Blasio gave $1.5 billion to his wife, Charlene, to implement this over 5 years. Did you ever see one mental health team put together of doctors or mental health care nurses? I never saw them out in the streets or in the subways. So I guess the cops are supposed to wait there until they decide to put this program together. They've been talking about it now for 13 years.
And where's the money?
Well, we know the money's disappeared. Figure banks in the Cayman Islands, Panama, Switzerland. But whenever you have a one-party system, even if it were all Republicans, you're not going to investigate your own. That's why you need to have a good two-party system. First thing I would demand with subpoena power is, where did the $1.5 billion go? I haven't heard one person say, in the throes of my depression, when Thrive was active, I picked up a telephone, and, one of their outreach persons really kept me from doing something I might have regretted. I haven't heard one testimonial, not one, for $1.5 billion, which has made Bill de Blasio and his grifter wife, Charlene, very wealthy. That's why they stay married legally, even though they're not married, for the purposes that when they do get brought into court, they won't have to testify against one another.
Maybe we need a Doge.
Department of Education, $36 billion budget. That's 1/3 of all the monies that we spend in the city of New York. Can anybody tell us that the children are getting the results of those monies in terms of learning and what they're able to do in the testing? And why are teachers still having to reach in their pockets, even now with $36 billion in the budget, and pay for supplies for their school children? That's an outrage. Right. And then remember, another bank's part of the bank's crime family. That chancellor did nothing to correct that. In fact, all these no-show jobs at the Department of Education, including, oh, that's right, his boo, Eric Adams' boo, lives in apartment 22H in Fort Lee, who never showed up for a job in 2.5 years and got paid about $250,000 by the Department of Education. I'd like to know how many people there are making money because of political patronage with no-show jobs.
Well, Rory has a point. Maybe we do need a Doge. The Office of Management and Budget in the city of New York is supposed to monitor the expenses. But meanwhile, things are wild. Would you create such a commission to investigate or oversee these agencies that are spending like crazy?
I wouldn't do it with Elon Musk, that's for sure. I think you do it agency by agency. Well, the moment you call it Doge or you use Elon Musk tactics, you're going to turn the city against you. Remember, this is not a red city. This is a city. Many instances that hates Trump. He only got 30% of the vote in the city. He did great in New York State. He got 42%, and obviously he swept the country. I got 30% in the city. Zeldin got 30% in the city. So let's not get too carried away and think what works for the nation is going to work in New York City. If you were to say to the taxpayers, we're spending $36 billion for your children and grandchildren's education, 1/3 of our budget, do you think we're getting results? I think the average parent would say no. You could convince them that we need to make sure, and especially the teachers union, the UFT, why are the teachers having to reach in their pockets and pay for supplies? Why is all that money going upstairs? What's happening? So you got to target it, and then you got to lobby the public and the teachers themselves to do something about it. But to go in like Elon Musk with a sledgehammer, you're going to have a lot of blowback in this city. And then you're not going to get your desired results because you can't do it. The mayor cannot operate in a fiefdom. He does not have the powers that the president of the United States has.
There's another area that I wanted to bring up. It has nothing to do with police work, but you're aware that there are 250,000 retirees from the city of New York, and they traditionally received traditional Medicare in retirement, including myself. And the city has decided to take that away from them and put them in a managed care program. And Adams went along with it. And you're familiar with the problem.
Oh, I am, because you're the one who informed me the last time I ran. And Adams championed that, no, we're not going to do what the UFT did and go to Aetna. Remember, it was all an Aetna thing. Even the UFT left that plan. Mm-hmm. Now, you would think, stubborn Eric Adams, why is he sticking with it when the very union that he said we should be doing what the UFT is doing has obviously said it didn't work out for our membership? So if you made a deal with union members about their health care post their service to the city, then you need to fulfill that. Again, I asked the question, if we can't do that, how do we find $5 billion for migrants? Where did they find that money? You see, they were able to find that money, and I know they weren't looking through the couches, for loose change. $5 billion, and we're not on the cusp of bankruptcy. They can find the money when they want to. But I think in this case, you got to wonder, what was Aetna doing in order to get all that business? Follow the money. Wherever there are contracts, especially in the Adams administration, there's always been kickbacks.
And, there's a lawsuit going. There's been multiple rulings, and there's appeals. The city's appealing. They're fighting this tooth and nail, which I don't really understand.
Ed, you're surprised they're fighting the 400 and want to get back on their jobs and get back pay and benefits. And Eric Adams always blames the lawyers, the corporation counsel. You're in charge. You tell the lawyers what to do. They counsel you. They give you advice. But ultimately, it's the mayor who makes the decision. Can you imagine Donald Trump saying, the lawyers advised me not to do that? Donald Trump would listen to the lawyers, which he has to do, and then he'd come up with his own solution. The only reason that Eric Adams does that is because he wants to hide behind the lawyers, where in reality, he probably feels that way, but wants to blame it on the lawyers. The easiest thing in the world to, it's the lawyers, mayor. The lawyers made me. No, you said you were in favor of the 250,000 retirees maintaining their health care the way it's always been. Then, once you got elected, then you decided, we're going to do it the way the UFT does it with Aetna. Then the UFT, Chairman Mogul said, it's not working for us. We're going back to the old way. And you still said, no, we're going to fight it in court.
So I'm assuming when you're the mayor, you would drop the lawsuit.
Absolutely. Look, my dad was a union member, right? My dad was promised certain pension benefits and health care by the union that they had paid for over the years.
Sure.
And like anybody, the older you get, that's when most of the money is spent. We knew that going into this process. So we can pay out $5 billion for people we don't even know, who've never been tested. We haven't even vetted them. Illegals, migrants, but we can't take care of our own. And we haven't gone bankrupt yet, having spent $5 billion. Where did we get that money? That's the first thing I'm going to say to everybody there, especially whoever the controller is. Where'd that money come from? We didn't have money to put $1 billion back for the cops. That's what they told us. We didn't have money for the emotionally disturbed because of Thrive. Where'd they find the $5 billion? I've yet to get an explanation of that, because basically you have to go through a legal process, and they prevent the citizens from knowing where our money is going. That's the one thing, transparency. People pay taxes. They got to know where that money is going. And they got to know that there are none of these no-bid contracts, always under these emergency executive provisions to take care of your cronies and your contributors. Hochul did it. Cuomo did it. De Blasio did it. And who did it better than anyone else? Eric Adams. Swagger man with no plan. Who's Timothy Pearson, after signing the contract, said, what, no crumbs for me? That might as well be Joe Picoco, who was the leg breaker for Cuomo, saying, what? Where's the ZD? Where's the ZD? They're always looking to feed off the taxpayers.
Well, Curtis, I think you've said it all. And I'm sure you'll continue saying it all.
Oh, one last thing, Ed.
Right.
The other day at the St. Patrick's Day Parade on Forest Avenue in Staten Island, I saw an auxiliary police officer with a nightclub. A wooden club, the old-fashioned wooden club you give a wooden shampoo to if somebody was attacking you as a cop. I said, how do they let you have that? So, I don't know. An average cop can have a nightclub. Excuse me, not a nightclub. Basically a baton to protect themselves. Wooden. None of this Star Wars stuff that doesn't work. That was always a way to protect the police officer, protect the public. And if you were starting trouble in the street and you saw the police officer take out that nightstick and go like this, you knew, don't cross that line. They took it away from the cops, like they've taken everything else away from the cops, their dignity, their pride, their benefits, their qualified immunity. I'm going to restore all that, and the city will get back on track.
And you're going to use mounted the way it should be mounted.
Oh, that's right. I
Crowd
forgot
control.
about that. There are 80 80 horses with trained professional police who know how to operate that. One mounted officer on a steed, a trusted steed, is worth 10 cops in the street, especially when dealing with all these crazies in these demonstrations in which they have demonstration de jour in our city every day.
All right. Well, anyway, Curtis, I want to thank you very much for your 4th appearance. And you have my vote. I live in the city. I can vote for you. And I'm going to contribute to your fund.
Thank you. You go, how do you do
Curtis,
that?
do you have it? Do you have a
Yes,
website?
yes.
Something you
Why
want
don't
to
you
give out?
tell the listeners and viewers how to contribute to you?
And please, don't throw nickels around like manhole covers out there, right? Sliwa for NYC.com. That's SLIWA for NYC.com. If you give me $10, it's matched 8 times. That's $90, right? Because you got the initial 10. Why, that's passable math. Can you believe that? That's miraculous. Your $10 can become $90 and help me to become the mayor. If you can donate more, please do so, because that gets us closer to the goal.
Very good.
Now, I'm waiting for your check, Ed. Your check, I know, won't bounce. I won't have to run to the bank before 5 o'clock.
Tuesday night, you're having a fundraiser. I'll be there.
That's right. Thank you.
Well, all right. Well, WABC listeners to our podcast and YouTube viewers, I hope you enjoyed the iconic Curtis Sliwa, who is going to be mayor. The last thing I can do.
Great. Rory, Ed, we got to make it happen. This way we restore the honor, the dignity, the pride, and the ability of a cop to be a cop in New York City.
Thank you, Curtis.